Good morning, Soberinos, and welcome to this week's Friday Fix. We have had some fantastic questions in the Facebook group this week, and today I want to explore and discuss one of the questions that came up. So Lisa posted a quote, and the quote she posted was from a guy called Matthias Alexander. You can look him up online. He's quite a famous guy, did lots of stuff around education, psychology, developed the Alexander technique, but check him out online. He's quite interesting in himself. But the quote from Matthias Alexander is, "People do not decide their futures." I'll post this in the comments below so you can see it. People do not decide their futures. They decide their habits. And their habits decide their futures. And when I was looking into this quote, I actually came up with another quote from Aristotle, which said, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an act, but a habit." And that relates very much to the Matthias Alexander quote. So I wanted to just talk about this for a minute and go through my understanding of what that, particularly the Matthias Alexander one, what that actually means and what my interpretation of that is. And then, because Stacey asked a really brilliant question in response to this quote, which was, is any addiction really a decision? Because she would feel like she kind of didn't have any choice. If she was drinking, that wasn't a choice. She hadn't chosen that. It was just something that would happen, which I can totally relate to. So I thought that was an excellent question. Are we really deciding our habits? Or if we have an unhealthy relationship with a substance like alcohol or like drugs or like sex or like any kind of behavior that's an unhealthy, addictive behavior for us, is that really a decision? So I want to answer or attempt to at least discuss and explore that question. But first, I just want to go through this quote. People do not decide their futures, they decide their habits, and their habits decide their futures. So the first bit I want to look at in that quote is people do not decide their futures. My understanding of that part, and sort of what I've done is I've circled the word futures, is because we kind of don't decide our futures, in that there is so much that is outside of our control that we cannot control. There is so much in life that happens to us that we can sometimes influence the outcome, but it's outside of our control. The people around us, their thoughts, their decisions, their feelings, their actions, that's all outside of our control. We might want people to do certain things. We might want people to change their behaviours, but that's outside of our control. We cannot control other people. We cannot control weather. We cannot control climate. We cannot control nature. We cannot control the decisions that governments make, that states make, that communities make, the communities around us. We cannot control our neighbours, which neighbours move in next door to us. We cannot control medical conditions that happen to us or that we inherit. There's a lot in life that is beyond our control. And in that way, we can't decide our futures because things will happen that we can't control. The next part of the statement, people do not decide their futures, they decide their habits. By habits, what we really mean is a repeated behaviour or action that can sometimes be healthy for us and sometimes be unhealthy for us. So there are lots and lots of healthy habits, like scrubbing our teeth before we go to bed, like drinking herbal tea in the evening instead of alcohol. There are lots and lots of healthy habits that we probably do quite naturally and unconsciously every day. And there are also unhealthy habits that can range from being frustrating and awkward for us, all the way through to actually really harmful and dangerous for us, like an unhealthy drinking habit. So there are a range of different habits, repeated actions and behaviours that we do. And some people might use the word addiction or addictive to describe some of those habits. And our choices around our actions and our behaviours, our thoughts, even our feelings, funnily enough, are within our control. So the bits of life that are within our control are how we choose to behave, how we choose to think, the mindset we choose to develop, how we choose to respond to the situations and the people and the things that are outside of our control around us, how we choose to respond to what happens to us that's outside our control. Our responses, reactions, behaviours, thoughts and feelings, everything that's down to us is within our control. And our habits are within our control. What's within our control is to choose how we respond, how we react. That's the bit that's within our control. And when he says, and their habits decide their futures, is what that really means is the daily actions, the responses, the reactions, the behaviours, the way we approach life, our mindset, all of those things that are within our control, how we choose to use that control is going to have an impact on our futures. So if our habits decide our futures, perhaps rather than the word decide, it might be more accurate to choose the word influence or shape. Our daily decisions, daily choices, the habits, behaviours and actions we choose to do on a daily basis will have an impact. They will influence, they will shape our futures, rather than perhaps deciding our futures, but they will certainly play a part in deciding our futures. Because, like I say, there is so much that is outside of our control that plays a part in shaping our futures. So our futures are shaped, I would say, partly by stuff that's outside of our control and partly by how we respond to that stuff and the mindset we choose to develop and the actions that we choose to take, the behaviours that we choose to develop. And we have choice, we have power, we have control. We're the ones making the decisions about all of that stuff that's within our control. So we do have the power to make those decisions. A good example is someone who wants their future to be one where they are healthy, where they are strong, where they are fit, where they are slim, where they are toned, where they are fitting into a certain size of clothing. Let's say that somebody wants that kind of future where they're fit enough to jump out of bed in the mornings and go for a run, where they're fit enough to play with their grandchildren and swing them round and lift them up and down, and be physically capable of doing all of those things. There's always the possibility that life or something outside of their control can take away that choice. There's always that possibility that a medical condition or an accident or something could perhaps take away some of that choice. But if that person was to choose to take certain actions and to repeat certain behaviours each day, to develop certain habits and a certain mindset. So for instance, if that person was to decide that instead of having dessert after their evening or their lunchtime meal, midday meal, because lunch means different things to different people in this country. But if someone were to decide that one of their daily habits was going to be, instead of having a dessert after their main meal of the day, they were going to go for a 60-minute walk. That is a daily habit that's going to be much more likely to result in the kind of future they want than not doing the walk and eating a bowl of ice cream instead. And that's the choice we have. We have the choice over what our daily habits are, and what our daily habits are going to make it more likely or less likely that we get the future we want. So I've just developed I'm just thinking of another example. I've just developed a habit because I want to have more strength, more physical strength, because my upper body strength is really, really crap. So what I'm doing is every day in the morning, I'm taking the heaviest dumbbells I can actually do a bicep curl with. A bicep curl is when you hold the weights down by your sides and you lift them up. You can't actually see because I'm too far away from the camera, but you actually curl them up so the weights end up by your shoulders. I'm choosing the heaviest weight that I actually struggle to lift them up. And all I'm doing is one repetition every morning where I start with the weights actually up here and I lower them over 3 seconds, and I do that once. And I've done that every day for 4 weeks. That's a habit I've developed. Having done that every day for 4 weeks, I can now do one repetition of a bicep curl up, which I couldn't do before. Now, I am much more likely to create this stronger version of me, the future that I want, if I develop that habit and repeat it every day. If I don't do that every day, I'm much less likely to get that future version of me that I want, the one that has stronger upper body strength, and the one that can do 10 press-ups, 10 push-ups in a row easily. So we do create more probability of getting the future we want, of deciding our futures, depending on the daily habits that we cultivate. So that's the first bit I wanted to discuss, was the quote itself. Stacey's question was kind of, and forgive me if I interpret your question wrong, Stacey. This is my interpretation of your question, and it might not be quite true to what you actually meant. So do feel free to post in the comments below if I'm getting this not quite right. But your question was, is any addiction really a decision? And you said that sometimes it felt for you like it wasn't really a choice. That the drinking, the behaviour was carrying you away, and that took all choice away from you. And I think in a way that is a slightly different point, and it's worth thinking about. So I don't think anybody chooses or decides to be addicted to anything. When I think back to the first few times I drank alcohol, I didn't think to myself, I want a future where I'm addicted to alcohol and where I'm really struggling every day to wake up, to get out of bed and to perform everyday normal tasks. I didn't decide that I wanted to create this future for myself where I felt sluggish, where I felt lethargic, where I felt I wasn't performing at my best, where I had developed a really unhealthy relationship with alcohol that was holding me back, where I was frightened for my future, and I was frightened for my mental health and my physical health. I was frightened of what was happening inside my body. I didn't decide that was the future I wanted for myself. That wasn't a choice I made when I very first started drinking. The choice I made, the decision I made when I first started drinking was, I really like the effects of alcohol. I really like the way it's making me feel. I really like the way the person I become when I'm drinking. I'm going to do that again. That was my decision. That was my choice. I think that quote, the way this relates to that quote, people don't decide their futures, they decide their habits, and their habits decide their futures, is I was deciding my habit. I was choosing that habit. I was choosing to drink more often, more regularly, and in higher amounts. That was my choice. I was making that choice based on the information I had available to me at the time, which was that alcohol made me feel better. That was my choice. What happened, let me just get rid of my alarm before it interrupts. What happened was that my relationship with alcohol became a very unhealthy one very quickly. Now, I couldn't have predicted that. That was one of those things within the world that was kind of outside of my control. And I think that might be what you're alluding to there, Stacey, is that whether or not we can live with a healthy relationship with alcohol or an unhealthy relationship with alcohol is kind of beyond our control. My mum and dad seem to have a very healthy relationship with alcohol. I have family, I have friends, I have lots of people that I know. In fact, most of the people that I know can drink alcohol quite healthily and quite happily and don't end up with unhealthy behaviours and unhealthy outcomes from that. I'm unable to do that. And that's kind of luck of the draw. So that's outside of my control. Where I have a choice, where I can make a decision, is whether I pick up the alcohol in the first place or not. That is within my control. So it is my decision. My daily habits are my decision. So whether I choose this evening to reach for a alcoholic lager or a non-alcoholic lager or a cup of herbal tea or a glass of sparkling water, that's my choice. I'm making a decision. What I choose to do on a daily basis is my decision, is my choice. That's where I have power. That's where I have control. Where I would lose that control and I would lose my decision-making powers would be if I chose to drink alcohol. So if, for instance, this evening I decided to go back to my old drinking behaviours, if I chose to crack open an expensive bottle of gin, pour myself a large gin and tonic, sit in the sunshine and enjoy that large G&T, the choice as to whether or not to have another drink would be taken away from me. Well, that's an interesting one. Would it actually be taken away from me? I would feel like it had been taken away from me. I would be much less able to make healthy choices regarding whether or not to have another drink if I'd had one drink, just one drink. I would be much less likely to make healthy choices after that one drink. And I don't want to put myself in that situation where I'm more likely to make an unhealthy choice. So I would choose not to have that first drink. But let's just say that I choose to have that first drink. Then I choose to open a bottle of wine, which was my pattern. I would choose to then open a bottle of wine and I would drink that bottle of wine. The more I was drinking, the more choice would be taken away from me. So it would become less and less my decision about whether to carry on drinking or not. So if I were to start drinking again now, my decisions would kind of be taken away from me. My decisions wouldn't really be my own. They would be the drinks. It would be the drink deciding for me, not me. And I think that might be the difference. That might be the kind of explanation of is any addiction a decision? Well, no, we don't decide to become addicted. And if I were to be drinking now, I wouldn't be deciding to carry on drinking. That would be the drink deciding to carry on drinking. But I do have the power to decide whether or not to pick up the drink in the first place. That's what I'm in control of. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's easy when you first stop drinking or when you're thinking about stopping drinking. I'm not suggesting that's easy, because there are years worth of habit and routine and pattern built up that's all embedded itself in our unconscious minds, and we need to do a bit of undoing that and a bit of relearning and a bit of practicing. But it is possible, and we do have control over what we decide to do. Yeah, I think that's the best way of describing actually my thinking around this, is that if I were to have a drink this evening, it would take away my power to decide, and it would be the alcohol that was deciding things for me. And not only would it result in, it would be very likely, if not definite, to result in a whole evening's worth of getting drunk, a hangover the next day, drinking again to alleviate the hangover, and then it would result in a binge that could go on and on and on, and would be very tough to come out of. And so, because I don't want that future, my decision is not to have that future. My decision is to have the sunny, liberated, happy, healthy, strong, doing all the things I want to do, living life the way I want to. That's the future I'm deciding I want. And what makes it more likely for me to get that future is the daily habits that I'm building. Daily habit of walking outside, a daily habit of working out, a daily habit of drinking lots of water, a daily habit of doing workouts, doing my strength stuff so that my upper body gets stronger. Cultivating good relationships with the people around me. All of these daily habits I'm deciding are going to lead to me having a happier, healthier, brighter future. I don't know how much that has satisfied you, Stacey, in terms of your question there about is any addiction a decision, but it's a bit of an exploration. And I thought it might be useful to share that with the group. So let me know your thoughts about how much control you've got over your decisions and what kind of daily habits you could be setting up right now to make it more likely that you will get the future that you want, despite events and things that are outside of your control happening. What daily habits could you be setting up right now to get the future that you want? I will look forward to catching up with you in tomorrow's Saturday Share. But in the meantime, thanks for the great questions. Keep them coming, and I will keep answering them, discussing them, exploring them in these Friday Fixes. So the group is your way of asking the question, and you will get lots and lots of support from other members in the group, and lots of other answers and suggestions and ideas and tips within the group. But the Friday Fixes are my way of exploring some of those ideas and some of those questions with you. So keep your questions and thoughts coming. It's great to hear from you. It's great to hear your thoughts on everything. I will look forward to catching up with you in tomorrow's Saturday Share. But in the meantime, let's go get sober together. Bye.